This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode, I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 382 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today we are going fun and light with some tales of travel meet cutes. Firstly, let me pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I'm recording this podcast today. So I feel like we're in a phase where we need some good news, and recently one of my guests told me the most delightful story about how she met her husband when travelling, so I decided that just in time for Valentine's Day, I would find more stories like this and create a whole Travel Meet Cutes episode. And honestly, it has been so lovely to edit this episode, to put it all together. I've been smiling all the way through, so I hope the same happens to you as you're listening. So without further ado, my first guests are Edward Liamo and Kim Crown. So kind of a spoiler alert to say, they now run Pristine Trails, a company offering safaris in Tanzania, and they obviously do this together, but they have a great story that led them to this point.
So I had just graduated from university. I had been pre-med. I went to university in the States, and I was looking for some medical experience outside of the U.S. before applying to medical school. I had actually focused on African health in my studies in college, along with all the pre-medical courses. Within that, I had to choose an African language to take, and I very randomly picked from like a list of 12 languages that my school offered, Swahili. Ended up taking it far longer than the required time. I took it for 3 years. Became quite decent at it, at least from like a school perspective. And so when I was figuring out where I wanted to go, Tanzania seemed like a very logical choice as a Swahili-speaking country. Mm-hmm. So I identified a volunteer program, which was an organization in the States that had sites all around the world. They had a couple sites actually at the time in Tanzania. And I think a friend of mine had been to this specific one in this town called Moshi. And so I picked it and booked it. And about 6 months after graduation, I got on a plane by myself and went with the intention of staying for 6 months to Tanzania to this volunteer site. So that's the origin of my getting to Tanzania. Yeah. And Edward and I met actually when I landed at the airport. That first
immediately.
Yes, immediately. So I was on the Tanzanian end, and my mom used to work for this organization at the time as one of the program coordinators. So I was in between school and I was passing time in local volunteering. There was a need for all these volunteers that needed a language translator. So I would go out with them to all the projects and volunteer. So that day, I never actually, the driver who was very friendly with, he was like, "Oh, let's go to the airport." I was like, "All right, there's nothing better than I'm doing." So I went with him to the airport, and yeah, there was Kim. We actually didn't we saw each other, but we didn't.
No, so there was a group of us arriving. None of us knew each other. Yeah, well, I didn't know anybody. Some other
15 volunteers coming in at the same time.
So I remember sitting on the bus on the way to the site from the airport. I was sitting next to this other young woman, Erin, and then Edward was sitting next to her, and she was very chatty, very extroverted, very open. Uh-huh. So they were talking, and I really recall like sitting on the window seat, just like listening and being very quiet and kind of just like taking everything in. I certainly did not go to Tanzania to meet my future husband. That was not my intention.
Not on the agenda at all.
Not on the agenda whatsoever at all. But I think it's amazing that we ended up meeting that very first day at the airport.
Yeah. And then we did eventually meet like a few days in, because she had the Swahili down, but she understood. So I was like, "Oh, who's this girl who's this American who knows like the structure of Swahili?" She'd always come up with like, "Yeah, but this is the structure." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, we don't, yes, that is the structure, but that's not how we talk. That's not how we talk. So we ended up chatting a lot after dinners. So the way this place worked, it was a compound where all the volunteers stayed. And I stayed offsite, but I would hang around for dinner and then leave. So after dinner in the evening, we'll end up chatting and going through her Swahili and her teaching me structure and me telling her no.
I love
You're
that.
you're gonna sound very weird if you use that in a normal context. So it was really
I had actually was on the tail end of what was in hindsight a very toxic relationship, a very long toxic relationship that started in high school and went for much of my college years. This wasn't necessarily in my mind at the time, but looking back, Edward represented kind of everything that boyfriend wasn't. There was just so many positive things. And again, this was wild to me to think I'm in this very foreign country. I'm here to volunteer. And I really jumped in on the volunteering and really loved it. And this was not why I was there. But there was something intriguing about him. And he represented just a lot of things that were really opposite to the experience I was kind of coming out of. I was really not rethinking, but thinking a lot about my values. I had grown up with instilled the values of giving back and doing good in the world. I had been doing that since I was young. That was very much a part of my being. And so being in Tanzania and being of service was very, really spoke to me. There was a lot of that in Edward that I saw, some of these shared values, which at the time seemed wild. How could we have these shared values? We're from completely opposite ends of the earth, very different upbringings, different religions, different upbringings, different cultures, different environments, everything. But in a lot of ways, there were so many similarities.
Yeah, and I remember she came back to the US after her first stint and quickly came back. But she always told me, I'm not here for you, I'm here for my work. And I said, okay, but I'm here.
By chance, I am also here.
I also happen to be here. So, since we're all here.
Yeah, what's funny now is at the time, so you could only stay at that volunteer program for 3 months. So I had booked initially for 6 months and thought I'll do the volunteer program for 3 months and then I'll stay on my own. I'll figure something out. In the first few weeks, I got so nervous and I changed my flight to 3 months. I was I can't stay here by myself. I just had a little freak out moment. And then after a month or two, I thought, okay, no, I can stay here. That's okay. And so I went back to the 6 months. And so once my time at the program was over, I had become really close with Edward's mom too. And so they lived just around the corner. And so she let me live with them for a few months. Little did she know there was any extracurricular activities occurring. I left for a couple months. I came back for the summer and stayed with them again. I was in the same area. I got to continue with all my same work. Right. I ended up getting really involved with a children's center and in a village and ultimately founded a nonprofit organization at the end of that next year, which kept me there for a long time and it's still running. So that was when his mom kind of came to learn that a long time after.
Yeah, she's
this nice girl keeps coming back.
Yeah, I know. She's wait a minute. And then for her, here's my mom. She's wait, what does this mean? And she loved Kim, but she's but she's from all the way there. What does this mean?
We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes. And this was 2006, and here we are, Jenny married.
Yeah, we're almost at our 20-year anniversary of meeting.
Yeah, it has been a journey. We're young. We grew up together. We moved to the US for a little bit when Kim was going to grad school.
We broke up for a little bit.
Yeah, so that's when I first moved to the US. Yeah, we broke up. I went back. She found her way back to the region for her work, not for me. And I said, but hey,
I'm here.
You're back and I'm here. I'm still here. And I guess at that point, we were more mature and we said, let's do this.
Yeah. If we were going to get back together at that point, it was going to be for the long haul. It wasn't going to be another, iffy situation. So that was in 2015, 16. Yeah.
Right.
So it had already been almost 10 years of back and forth.
Up and down journeys.
So it was a bit of an up and down journey from that original meeting, but Kim and Edward are now based in Los Angeles. They're married with twin 6-year-old kids and very happy. It was just a really lovely chat, and to hear them tell their story together was just a delight. So thank you to both. My next guest is Hannah Balint. Hannah is originally British, but a great wanderer. She was living in Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon, and she was about to leave Vietnam to try out life elsewhere, but fate stepped in.
I am someone that has also been that person that has moved around the world for love, not just for one person. So it's quite a big part of my life and a bit of a pattern. And I embrace it. It's just part of my story. And that's okay. It's not something that I look down upon. Yeah, I was living in Vietnam in 2000 and when did I move there? 2010, I moved to Vietnam, and I was an English teacher there initially, but ended up staying longer, and that's part of this story. Mm-hmm. And I had a year's contract as an English teacher. I had initially moved out to Asia because I was with somebody else. They lived in Singapore, and I didn't want to live in Singapore. I wanted to live somewhere a little bit less built up, I guess, a little less modern than Singapore. So my nose took me to Vietnam. It was something that I had always wanted to do, and that was the opportunity and the time to do it. So I was an English teacher in Vietnam. That initial relationship had broken up only 3 months before, and it was a complete blow up in your face type experience. Anyway, I met my husband only 3 months later, and 3 weeks before I was due to leave Vietnam.
Oh, no.
So I had my year's contract had nearly ended. And the idea was that I was going to then move to France to be an English teacher. Right. I'd always wanted to learn French, and it was just the next plan of action that I hadn't really thought through that much. Just like, it's closer to home. So the plan was, I'm going to move to France. I think I had a loose plan of falling in love with a Frenchman. Lots of people laugh at that idea. As luck would happen, I then met an Aussie 3 weeks before I was due to leave Vietnam. And that Aussie walked into my life in a unisex bathroom in a club in Vietnam. And I was literally at the basin washing my hands, maybe touching up my makeup. I don't know what I was doing. And he walked in, and both of us didn't realize it was a unisex bathroom.
Oh, no.
So he walked in, and I was just like, huh? And he was like, what? So he hates that I tell this story that we met in the toilet, which is why I have to broadcast it everywhere.
As widely as possible.
So, as widely as possible. Everyone needs to know. You can find true love in the toilet. So that is how things started. So he looked at the door to check, has he gone into the right place? And I was just like, yeah, I think it's okay. And then that is how the beginning of our love story began. So within 24 hours, I think I had proposed to him because I was like, an Aussie passport, that would be good. I'd quite like one of those. And yeah, 24 hours later, we went on our actual first date.
Aww.
And I think it was if anyone's been to Vietnam, I think it was in the Sheraton Hotel up at the top in the bar. And I remember that his mum called him, and he was talking on the phone to her briefly because I said, just answer it, it's fine. And he was like, yeah, I'm just out on a date with this English young lady. And I remember that evening he had said to me, so I know that you're planning on leaving in 3 weeks' time. Why don't you go ahead, do your, you've got plans. So, and I had about 6 weeks of travel plans, and I had weddings and things to go to. So it was like, okay, well, you should go. But would you consider coming back? This is 24 hours into meeting him. Would you consider coming back? And if it doesn't work out, then I'll help you move to France and whatever. And I was like, hang on a minute. I've just met this fella, and I had a pretty devastating breakup 3 months prior. But yet there was something about him that was so incredibly genuine. I don't know, but maybe the green lights were on, right? You know how they talk about how you're just ready and you don't judge too much. For the wrong person with the red light, maybe they would have gone, whoa now, that's way too much.
Yeah.
Let's stop this conversation, and I'm never going to
This is crazy, so no, let's not, But
I didn't think that. I was just like, great. What a proposition. Well, my parents are coming out in 2 weeks to travel with me and then take me to France or go back home. And I said, let's just put a pause on that and you should meet them first. This is 24 hours after meeting him. So 2 weeks later, my parents arrived. I didn't tell them that I'd met someone. I remember taking them for a drink on the first night somewhere and saying, so I think my plans might be changing. I've met someone. And one of the first things that my dad said, because when I was 19, I did a all the way around the world trip. And the last thing that my father had said to me at the airport, he said, just don't fall in love with an Aussie. That was just the only thing he had said to me. Don't fall in love with an Aussie because it's so far away. And then I'm telling him, however many years later it was, so I've got some news. I've possibly got a new person in my life and I'm thinking about coming back to Vietnam. And he went, don't tell me. He's an Australian. And I was like, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, Dad.
So yeah, I went all the way to Vietnam to find an Aussie. And my parents, after 3 weeks of knowing my now husband, moved me into his place, helped me move all my things in. And we then were together. We've been together for 14 and a half years.
So another very happy ending. It was actually hearing Hannah's story a couple of months back when I initially recorded this chat with her that prompted me to make this whole episode. So I'm especially grateful, Hannah. Now, my final guest today is Shani Hudson. Shani's a dear friend of mine, and many years ago on episode 212, she told us about her many weddings to the same man in many parts of the world. But of course, now we have to go back to the beginning to see how it all began.
So I met my husband around 17 years ago in Costa Rica at a remote turtle rescue camp on the coast of Costa Rica. Now, it was the Caribbean coast. It was very beautiful. And the first time I actually was introduced to him was after I'd taken a half-an-hour boat ride up the river past howling monkeys. And we pulled into a canal behind the sort of camp where everyone stayed. And this man wearing pink pants, of all things, came up to help me with my bag. Now, I was really determined that I was going to make a really good first impression at the camp, so I didn't want anyone to feel the need that they had to help me with anything. So when he offered to help me with my bag, I said, oh, no, I'm good, and hauled 2 20-kilo backpacks on both my shoulders out of this boat at the same time and almost broke my back. But this man, I had absolutely no attraction to at the time, and quite controversially, I actually attended that turtle rescue with my then partner. So I had set off an around-the-world trip with my partner, saved up lots of money, quit our jobs to sort of live the dream before we'd settled down. Costa Rica was our first stop. So I was with someone else when I met my husband. I didn't realize it at the time that this man in pink pants would turn out to be the one at all. So I spent about 2 weeks at this turtle camp and met a great group of people, and we were all just friends. And what we did is we planned to have a little reunion when we all went back to the UK. So I went traveling around the world with my then partner, all through South America, all through Africa. And the plan was that we would have a reunion in Brighton because a lot of that group were based in the UK. My now husband was Dutch, so he was going to fly in. But of course, not so tragically, my then partner and I broke up in Africa, and I ended up going to the reunion in the UK solo. And again, another missed chance is that we all ended up sleeping in someone's house in the UK, ended up sleeping on an air mattress top to toe with my husband. Absolutely nothing went on. But there was a photograph taken at the time, shared to Facebook, taken by someone else of me and him dancing. And it wasn't until after this photo appeared online that I went, oh my goodness, it was like something out of Dirty Dancing. It was very raunchy. The chemistry was obviously off the charts in the photo, but I was completely oblivious. Like, this was just another one of my good friends. Fast forward another year, I've gone home. I'm working back in Sydney. I am going to Europe to do a bus tour. And on an absolute whim, I sent him an email and I said, I know this is a silly idea, but is there any chance you want to take a week off work, fly to Rome and hang out with me before I start my trip around Europe? And almost immediately, I got a response back. He said, of course, that's a silly idea. He goes, I'll fly to Rome and hang out for a week. If it's with you, that's even better. Just friends, but then suddenly the penny started to drop because that was a very kind message. Again, still not sure. And so we met in Rome and walked around Rome and had a wonderful time. But when I arrived in Rome, my flight arrived before my partner's. And when I checked in at the hotel just to leave my luggage, she said, oh, the room's almost ready. We just wanted to know, would you like the bed made up as a double or 2 singles? And I might have been a little bit cheeky and told her to make it up as a double.
But he would never know. That's just the way the room came.
I know, but when he did arrive, he's like, oh, they made the bed up as a double. And I went, oh, yeah, oh, well, we can share. But we had a great first day in Rome, walking around Rome. I was incredibly jet lagged, which he was very sympathetic about. And we just ate gelato and spent the entire day talking. Finally, at the end of the day, we ended up kissing, which was very nice. But we had one magical week where we went from Rome down to Napoli and then to Sorrento. So we spent this magical week running around and falling in love like we were in some B-grade Netflix movie. And then after 1 week, I started my bus tour. So I was on a top deck tour of Europe that started in Rome. And, you know, we kept in touch. We chatted every day. And then my tour went through Rome and into the Greek islands and then came to Turkey. You know, I've started this thing off with this tall, dark European. And he says to me, oh, I've arranged a friend in Turkey to bring you something. I've arranged a present for you. And of course, I'm very trusting and I didn't think to myself at all that he would actually show up. But our bus breaks down on the way into Turkey and I feel terrible that I'm going to miss his friend. So I'm desperately messaging him and calling him saying, I can't make it. Our buses broke down. I'm so sorry, you know, and he's not responding. I'm thinking, what is going on? Why isn't he responding? And then we drive into Istanbul and we're right by the Hagia Sophia. And everyone on the bus is like, has been saying to me all day, he's going to be there. He's going to be there. And I'm like, no, he's not. It's just a friend. He's been to Turkey before. He's got friends he visits there that he knows. No. So the bus pulls up to the Hagia Sophia and everyone on the bus, 50 people know what's going on, that I've met this guy, very indiscreet. And they're like, he's going to be there. And then I spot him. Sitting on the benches by the fountains of the Hagia Sophia. Very iconic place, very famous. And so the bus driver of my tour opens the bus and being watched with, 50, 20-year-olds pressed up against the windows, almost tipping the bus over. I run up to him and tap him on the shoulder and surprise him, even though he's meant to surprise me. With a full audience, lots of whooping and cheering, thunderous applause. We get like 3 seconds of reunion. And then he has to come with me and sprint for the bus because the bus has to leave and I don't know where the bus is going. So he runs with me, jumps on the bus to whoops and cheers and carrying on and gets to meet 50 people on the bus who all would like to share with him what they've just seen. And my husband is a really quiet guy, not easily intimidated, but also not really wanting to be the center of attention. So he just jumped onto this bus with 50 people that have just seen a massive romantic reunion and waves to us all. He did well. It did set a very high precedent, though, which did come back to haunt him many times. He set the bar so high that it was almost impossible to ever, in the reality of romances, ever come back to. And so the tour ended in Amsterdam and he lived about 45 minutes south in Rotterdam. So he came and picked me up from the bus when I arrived in Amsterdam and took me home, got to see his house, meet his family, meet the cat. And then pretty much it was decided there and then that I would be moving to Europe to live with him.
So to bring you up to date, after some years living in Europe, eventually Shani and her husband moved back to Sydney. They now have a couple of kids, a dog, a house on the river, the proper, they all lived happily ever after kind of story. So thank you, Shani, for sharing that with us. And thank you all for listening to episode 382 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. I hope it's been a nice change from some of the doom and gloom around the world and got you in the mood for Valentine's Day as well. Thanks so much, firstly, to Edward and Kim from Pristine Trails. They run safaris and also Kilimanjaro climbs in Tanzania at pristinetrails.com. Thanks also to Hannah from Hannah Balint Coaching. That's Balint, hannahbalintcoaching.com. So funny story is, well, it's very logical, actually. Hannah is now a coach coaching people who are relocating, especially between countries. She has plenty of experience. And thank you also to my dear friend Shani, who doesn't really have somewhere online that she wants me to share because she says she's too unsocial these days online. But thank you, Shani. It was a great chance to catch up as well. Always nice to have a friend on Don't forget, of course, to come over to the Facebook or LinkedIn groups for Thoughtful Travellers. If you have a travel meet cute, come and share it with us there as well. Continue to spread the good news. And remember the Thoughtful Travellers newsletter at thoughtfultravel.substack.com. These links and more are all in the show notes for this episode. They are at notaballerina.com/382. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.